Hey, this is Anney
and Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff I Never Told You, production of iHeartRadio. And today is April 17th, 2025, as we record this, which means we just passed tax day. In the United States, taxes are so stressful.
They are.
I hate doing them. I feel like I have to just focus so hard, get out my dictionary. I feel like I'm being tricked. I'm like, okay, you're telling me that I just don't think I have this, but you're telling me I do. It's just a mess. How was it for you this year, Samantha?
So I started in really early because what we usually get for our job in general went down significantly. That made me have a panic moment. And I knew with everything happening with the new administration that I wanted to get it done as soon as possible with all the when I got all the documents. And I don't have as many other people since we only have one succinct job. I do. And then like a house and a few other things. And the forms come in pretty quickly, like the first month. So as soon as I got them all, I went in immediately because I was like, nope, y'all can't trick me. You can't trick me. So it was pretty seamless, and I got everything back pretty quickly. Soon after, I turned everything in, as well as started. I think federal was really fast this year for me. All the headlines started popping up about all the changes that could be coming. I was like, yep, nope, I got it done. You can't get me. So I felt a little like proud of myself for trying to get this out the way.
Well,
I say all of that in braggy form. Sorry, y'all.
No, it's all right. Taxes, I usually try to get them done early, but I feel like I'm always missing one form.
Yeah.
Which sometimes is true and sometimes isn't. But this year I told you I mistakenly misremembered when we recorded the audiobook and tried to log that in into my taxes.
You were a year behind.
And it was like, no. And that's when I had a wake-up call. I was like, oh, wow, time has really ceased to matter to me.
Right.
I haven't gotten anything back yet, so we'll see. We'll see. And famously to me, I have been audited, so very paranoid. Very paranoid. But today, we thought we would do kind of an overview of some issues with women in taxes and then women in tariffs, which is a big conversation happening in the U.S. right now. I would love if people from other countries would write in about how taxes work in your country. I'm just curious. But yes, you can see our past episodes on the pink tax, and also I would say our marriage and people with disabilities episode where we talk about that. But all right, starting with taxes, tax day was a couple of days ago as we record this, and I wanted to look to see if there were any issues around sexism in taxes, and of course the answer is yes, of course it is. One of the main things I found was joint filing with the spouse in the U.S. often results in women getting taxed at a higher rate in a heteronormative sense. This is because these rules were designed when women largely stayed at home while men worked and were largely designed to spare white men some tax money. Now that women often work along with their partner, this can mean that women are getting taxed more highly. And it has to do with the gender pay gap, a bunch of other things, but that is one of the main reasons. While partners can file their taxes separately, only 7% do. This leads some women to decide to quit their jobs and focus on childcare to save money, which, as we always say, if you want to stay at home and take care of children, that's fantastic. That is not a lesser choice, but it should be a choice. Not something that you're forced into. Studies have found that reworking the whole thing or getting rid of this sort of joint filing system that we have right now altogether would increase married women's participation in the workforce. Most other countries have abandoned this system, by the way. But all right. There is a lot of history behind this. For a long time in the U.S., women were considered second-class citizens, and married women were required to file under their husband's name. In the 90s, activists did try to amend this whole thing or get rid of it, but conservatives claimed it was essentially an attack on women being homemakers and traditional marriage. So they were like, no way.
Yeah, interestingly, according to Miss Magazine, single women are hit hard too. Here's a quote, quote, "The tax code has been designed to favor married couples," as former Department of the Treasury tax attorney Lily King concluded in a paper on the lack of fairness within our system. She writes, "A single person never pays less relative to a couple, whether married or unmarried, with the same amount of income as a single person."
Studies find Black folks and gay folks are penalized too for largely systemic reasons. I guess I should put here, I think it's obvious, but we're not tax experts. So you can, there has been a lot written about this, and you can look into it if you would like. But for now, we're just doing kind of an overview. I will say my dad used to do my taxes, and it did feel at the time like he was the man who understood it, and I could never get it, you know? And I don't think he was projecting that to me necessarily, but that's what I was kind of picking up. And also, I don't blame him, but it was the tax return he turned in that got me audited.
Oh, really? I don't think I knew this. I thought you had actually had a tax person, accountant.
No, but I think the penalty should have been very minor, but I moved. And I think I missed the notification, and it just builds up if you don't know you got it. And so it should have been a minor, like he misdid one thing. He did one thing incorrectly. It should have been like a $200 fee. It got a lot higher than that.
So this is a question I have, in which even not before this administration, but like all of the departments, especially like things like the tax, IRS and such, it's impossible to get to them. And you can never figure out how to try to contest anything, and everything comes through mail. That is, and if you don't get it, it literally just gets sent back, and that's it. And then you get penalized for that. That seems absurd.
It is.
It is. It feels like a setup.
It is. And now they're firing more of the IRS people, of course. When I finally got to an IRS person, when I was being audited, she was crying, and I was like, oh, God, it's going to be okay. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, look at this fee. This is ridiculous. It was a very ridiculous fee. It was horrible. I cried every time I got a message from the IRS. And essentially, it was from like one little error and me moving and not getting a message. And it was pretty devastating. Like, if I hadn't had savings, that would have really taken me out. And it wasn't really my fault.
Right. I mean, that's kind of what happened with like student loans and people's, like, if you can't pay off it an entire chunk, it just builds up. Like, I looked back at the amount of what I originally took out, and it has grown 8 times what I took out. And by the way, I've been paying. I paid for like the past entirety of my college, except for like 1 year with the pause during COVID. And like, it's such an absurd amount that it went to from what it was to because I was not, as a social worker who got paid less than minimum wage, could not pay the entirety of the amount. So it just grew.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, just like, this is where it's a scheme. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because again, I'm not going to give you the number, but Samantha knows it, and it was horrendous.
Yeah.
And I should have only paid $200, and it was eye-watering.
Yeah.
How much I ended up having to pay, and it was just because I didn't know I had something to pay. And I had to hire a fancy lawyer.
Right. So you even had to shell out more money
Yes.
to get it settled.
Yes. Another thing that people talk about when it comes to women and the tax industry here in the US and around the world, it's largely made up of men, also no surprise, especially in kind of more executive leadership roles. I read somewhere that women only account for about 11% of finance ministers. There's also a whole story about how there was a finance global summit and there was only one woman and she wasn't allowed to take a picture with the men. So it's not great. That's not good. Another thing that's no surprise, 9 out of 10 US dollar billionaires are men. So if they aren't getting properly taxed or their investments aren't getting properly taxed, it widens the gender poverty gap and the gender savings gap. And yeah, there are other more complicated ways taxes impact women too, including how taxes are allocated, what tax-funded programs they go to or don't go to, improving safety in public spaces, investment into things like domestic violence, childcare, all of which childcare still largely falls to women, and a lot of the tax blog posts I read were about this. As you can imagine, those are not a high priority for this administration. And in fact, they are actively being dismantled. So that's another way taxes impact women. And of course, all of this is made worse by the pink tax, which we have talked about before. But the pink tax is when products typically more geared towards women are more heavily taxed, or even just products women need. They're just more heavily taxed. So that makes the whole thing worse.
Interestingly, I came up on someone who just wrote a book titled Double Tax, The Double Tax, Anna Gifty Hachiman. I'm so sorry if I said that wrong. I'm going to find the correct way to say it because I am really interested in this book. And she writes not only about the pink tax, but how women of color, specifically Black women, are doubly taxed on top of that, and then talking about tariffs. So we'll look into that. But I find that conversation starting to happen more, and I'm really glad to that. But it's this eye-opening moment of realizing, yeah, this is going to affect everyone, but who's going to affect them most are Black women.
Yep. Yeah. Which does bring us to tariffs and so-called pink tariffs. Okay.
Wow, we got a fun name for that too.
I know. Let's just put a fun name on it. Okay. So again, not experts, but I did want to put this in here because a lot of people do get this wrong, including some people that are running this country. A tariff is paid by the country doing the importing, not the country where the products are coming from. All right. Okay, so Trump has long been obsessed with tariffs. He made it clear, all of you CEOs that are now mad, that this was something he was going to do, something to expect. And of course, the rollout of his tariffs was disastrous and hurt not only the U.S. economy, but the global economy. So he paused them for 90 days, which, by the way, he had been president less than 90 days when this happened. Isn't that a fun fact? Apart from the tariffs on China, which is an ongoing thing right now. But, be cool. It's okay, be cool. So if these tariffs do roll out according to plan, they are anticipated to cost American households an annual $1,600 to $2,000, but other estimates put it higher in the $3,000 range, which is a lot. And this is a thing I found that I was shocked and then I guess so. Apparently incels love Trump's tariffs and think they will get them girlfriends. All right. So the manosphere, which we have an episode on, you can check out, that we did pretty immediately after the election, is torn between confusion and anger at these tariffs. They don't know. A lot of them are just trying to explain them away or justify them even as Trump himself is going all over the place and backtracking and changing his mind. The market's in turmoil. And then, of course, I don't know why we got to do this, but here we are. A Fox News host wondered if tariffs could be the ultimate testosterone boost. Another one claimed that the return of factory jobs to the U.S. is good because, quote, when you sit behind a screen all day, it makes you a woman. Studies have shown this. Meanwhile, the Chiron read something like Trump's manly tariffs. This is a real thing, and it was a meme. So you can look that up because these are manly jobs. Another big argument is like, if you can't stomach the turmoil, you're no man.
Yeah.
Successful men must suffer. They don't have fun. You hustle, except sometimes. But mostly no.
Can we also talk about with this level of like become a man, be in the factories, be out there, use your hands, that black lung has come back.
Oh, jeez.
I just
Another
read that.
thing that's come back.
I just read that because of this has everything to do with the CDC and the different health departments and the disease prevention stuff. But in this conversation of like, beware coal miners who are still existing, who some of them, a chunk of them, did vote for Trump, union people who are voting and said we should. They never necessarily endorsed Trump, but they didn't endorse anyone else. Like certain people were like, oh no, but definitely Trump. Yeah. Old school diseases, which I don't think they were eradicated. Like, I don't know much about black lung, so maybe someone else who does can come at me and let me know. But yeah, they're talking about reported cases of an increase or a notable difference of increase in black lung. Be a man, die early of black lung.
Yeah, well, there is a lot being written about this because there's a lot of discourse that's happening within the manosphere that is essentially women are at fault, of course, because they messed with the, quote, natural order, and they were having fun. They were ruining men's lives by having fun and by wanting divorces. And so the discourse is, you shouldn't be having fun. This should hurt. And if you question it, what's wrong with you? It's very much turning it on like, you can't, if you're too weak if you can't stomach what this is. But also, it's very funny / sad how quickly even proponents of these tariffs, or at least they say they're proponents of these tariffs, fold when reporters are like, but what about automation and AI? Well, that, and they just can't answer it. They just cannot answer it. And I'm like,
it's similar questions to what's happening with immigration. Like when they're being questioned with like, well, how do you know this? why are you defying the judges? Who has more rules? Should everyone follow the judges' rules? And they're just like, you're talking about lawyers. Literally no answers, because they know it cannot stand up in true argument, which is also why like town halls are being very, very organized to make sure that they don't have any opposition. MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, just decided to arrest all of them and also pretty much stun gun them for talking.
Yeah. They don't have answers. There is one clip that is, I mean, again, it's sad, but it's also kind of funny where the journalist just asks, I think it's the main tariff guy, Steve, whatever his name is. Well, you know who I'm talking about.
No, not Bannon. What's his face?
No.
The very pale, bald dude, right?
Yeah. She asked him about this, and he just literally kind of trails off and is like, yeah. Like, okay. Also, I just have to put this in here. This is not new, but I ran into it when I was researching this. I love how many interesting, in quotes, articles I find about incels are just kind of traditionalist men, where they're like, I want a woman, but women, I hate them.
Right.
But if she'll have me, then I guess she's fine. But also, I deserve more than her.
Right. She should be grateful for me. And if she's not bowing down to me, then she's not doing her duty.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating to me. It's fascinating and terrifying how they're like, I want a woman. I hate this woman, but she'll do. Okay, great.
Thank you so much.
I love this. But okay, that does bring us to pink tariffs. According to a study by the U.S. International Trade Commission conducted in 2018, tariffs impact women and low-income people disproportionately.
Right. So a bill introduced in March 2025 by 2 U.S. Congresswomen calls for the Treasury Department to study pink tariffs. This is because since we're all talking about tariffs because of Trump, people have pointed out some gender discrepancies and disparities. For example, a jacket classified as a men's jacket may be taxed at a lower rate than a women's jacket. Same product, more taxes. The proposed tariffs are only going to magnify the problem of pink taxes. On top of that, unisex clothing stands to be taxed as if they were women's clothes, obviously.
Yeah. And one of the big arguments people that are proponents of this make is that men are generally bigger, so it costs more fabric, but that doesn't make sense. The cost analysis doesn't work out that way. Some quick numbers. The U.S. imports an estimated 98% of clothes and 99% of shoes. According to the Progressive Policy Institute, or PPI, taxes and tariffs on women's clothing likely cost women around $2.5 billion a year. On average, women pay 3% more on tariffs in the clothing category as compared to men. Women's clothes also are more frequently made with more expensive and more highly taxed fibers, further driving up the impact of tariffs. And there are quite a few examples. One that pops up pretty often in articles about this is that men's silk underwear is often taxed at 0.9%, while women's silk underwear is at 2.1%. For wool jackets, the tariff on men's is 6%, while it's 16% for women. Studies from 2023 found that Vietnam and China globally exported more than half of the supply of underwear. So again, that the country that's importing the thing is paying the tariffs.
Right. I think we all know this, and there's this level of like rooting for the lesser evil because China's not great. They just had a whole issue about human rights stuff. So we're not saying China is a good country. We're not saying everything they do is great. However, the pushback they're giving to the U.S. is entertaining.
Yeah.
I'm going to word this carefully because at the very least, unlike the people within our country and systems and educational systems and such that are bowing down preemptively because they are afraid of the repercussions, we have places like China who's like, F you, here we go, in which they gave the 280-day like passport-free option for people to come in and shop. Have you seen this? And then I don't know about some other people's feed, but some of my FYP is showing just Chinese importers and I guess factory people being like, this is your Louis Vuitton bag. It takes $16 for us to make it. Come and get it. Literally is the response, as well as the pushback and being like, oh, we don't need meat from the US, we'll go to Australia. Oh, we don't need oil from the US, we'll go to Canada. So this is not working. It's not working. It's not working. And this whole attitude of like, well, good, people will buy within the US. Doubtful.
We don't have the infrastructure.
We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the workers anymore.
No.
Because they've been detained or have left. So this is not going the way. I mean, again, we're talking to our own audience, but it's interesting to see the pushback in this. And of course, clothing is not the only category with gender tariffs like these either. Looking at shoes and toys, again, purses and like all the extras, toiletries, they're getting the same treatment.
Yes. And all of this, just like we talked about, is further worsened by things like the gender wage gap and for marginalized intersections like women of color. There are a couple of groups particularly impacted. And as mentioned, Black women is a big one. Black-owned businesses and products for Black women are predicted to be heavily impacted. This is compounded by a couple of factors: historic, systemic lack of access to capital, for instance. And friend of the show, Nikki Porche at Buy From a Black Woman, has an article about Black women and tariffs in the U.S. over on her site. If you want to check that out, I recommend it.
Yeah, and I think we're going to need to do like another episode with her soon, maybe a happy hour episode, which is not a happy hour, but where we are taking in some adult beverages, because this is a hard topic that we need to be talking about on a constant basis. Like, we have to have these conversations at the forefront about the marginalized folks being impacted, because that's what we often ignore and pretend like it's not a big deal. And as an intersectional show, we're not going to bypass that. So I think we're going to have to, Nikki, if you hear us, we're coming. We need to come and have some drinks.
Yes.
Anyway, so single mothers are also one of the big conversations. Via Forbes article, Ed Greaser from the PPI said, single parent families, which are 90% women headed, spend about 40% of their income buying goods. The high income level, the top 10% of the households spend about 20% of their income on goods. If you're doing a tariff increase at all, and especially if you're coupling it with income taxes, you're shifting tax burden away from the top end and towards the bottom end of earners, and it will fall mostly heavily on single moms. Hello, pro-birther people. Do you understand what is happening? These people that you have so advocated that they have to have babies, who have followed through and have fallen into your good graces, are now suffering the most.
Yep. Also, women-owned businesses have reported having no clarity or warning. I don't think this is unique to women-owned businesses, but I was reading about women-owned businesses in this case, about how they can't adapt because things change daily. On top of that, they're having to spend hours a day talking to suppliers. I can really relate to this personally. When you have like a work crisis and suddenly like your whole work day is just trying to fix this crisis, talk to other people, like that's a huge ask on your time. That's a whole thing. They also lament the fact that we just, like I said, don't have the infrastructure in the US to fill these gaps at the moment. And it takes longer to put that infrastructure in place than the administration is admitting. So, many say the reason for a lot of this is misogyny. Surprise, surprise. When these tariff deals were negotiated, women weren't at the table. The first U.S. tariff laws were penned in the 18th century before women could vote, and were sort of backed off on with the implementation of the income tax in the early 1900s. However, they made a comeback with the Great Depression in the 1920s and 30s. Make of that as you will. As discussed in our recent Equal Pay Day episode, all of these issues compound to mean women have less in savings, less for things like travel. Women live longer than men, but have less money to retire. And now people are worried about things like Social Security, Medicaid, their 401ks, which women are less likely to have. Cuts to programs that help women, especially when it comes to women with children. After Trump backed off and put a 90-day pause on his tariffs barring China, a group of 38 women company founders came together to request the president for tariff exemptions. We'll see, but I have...
So he's going to give individual businesses, like, you can get these items personally to you without, like, how does that, how would it, okay, never mind, keep going.
I think it was just kind of a, like, let's think about this, but I'm
Hail
like,
Mary.
I don't think he's going to think about it. I don't think that's kind of the problem.
If he does that for anyone, it's going to be Amazon.
Yeah. Ugh. Anyway, I do want to say, kind of going back to the point you made a little bit earlier, Samantha, there is a much more complicated, broader conversation about fast fashion and how that's related to this, and the rights of the workers manufacturing these items, and people getting fair pay for things. It is a conversation that is being exploited in a lot of this, but it's also a conversation we do need to include and not exploit. Like, it is a very important conversation to have.
There's so much.
There is so much. And like we said, this was just a brief overview, and it is a rapidly changing conversation as we're talking about it. But listeners, if you have any thoughts about this, I would love to hear personally from other countries about how your tax system works. But also, yeah, if there's anything you want to hear us dig into more, please let us know. You can email us at hello@stuffmomnevertoldyou.com. You can find us on Blue Sky at Momstuff Podcast or on Instagram and TikTok at Stuff Mom Never Told You. We're also on YouTube. We have a TeePublic store and we have a book you can get wherever you get your books. Thanks as always to our super producer Christina, our executive producer Maya, and our contributor Joey.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff Mom Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.